All right, as many of you have worked hard, let's go over and let's talk about mitosis versus meiosis. So there are some similarities between the two, and there are also several differences. So let's start by comparing metaphases. So when we take a look at metaphase of meiosis, we see a little bit different in the fact that there are two chromosomes lined up in the middle this time. We call those homologous pairs. And what we recognize, something else different that happens, is we see this process called crossing over that takes place. And that happens during interphase as the DNA is being duplicated. Okay, some of the DNA transfers from one to the next. That's what allows for differentiation in meiosis, creating new cells compared to mitosis, which creates exact replicas. So now, the answers to our 4 questions. So the first one was how many cell divisions take place during meiosis? 2 cell divisions take place during meiosis compared to the 1 that takes place in mitosis. Number 2, what kind of chromosome pairs line up in the middle during metaphase? Those are called homologous pairs because they're 2 of the same pairs. 3, explain a difference in the process of interphase 1 and interphase 2 of meiosis. In interphase 1, the DNA duplicates, so then that way we can separate it into all of the new daughter cells. In interphase 2, it does not, because the whole process is to cause the division to happen, so we don't want to re-replicate what we're trying to divide. And last but not least, what have we learned from this video? Well, hopefully overall we've learned that these 2 processes are very similar. They're both a form of cell division, but as you can see, some of my typing's a little bit there. Okay, but meiosis undergoes 2 cell divisions and results in 4 haploid cells. Haploid being that it results in half of the amount of genetic material that the original parent had. Where in mitosis, they are 2 diploid cells, which are exact replicas of the DNA. Meiosis is the cell division of sex cells compared to mitosis, which is the division of body cells. Mitosis is asexual, which means it can happen by itself, and meiosis is sexual, which means it takes the 2. Let's go to the next one. So when we take a look at metaphase 1 of mitosis and meiosis, just kind of continuing on with that, we see that we have our single chromosomes in mitosis compared to our homologous pairs in meiosis. And then how many daughter cells are there at the end of meiosis? We end up with 4 haploid daughter cells, which means they are going to have half of that genetic material. So our end result in mitosis, we end up with what are called diploid cells. Which is the full genetic material. Okay, in meiosis, we get haploid cells, and we get half the genetic material. And this is where like your egg and your sperm come together, and then you get half from mom, half from dad, and that's what creates the zygote, the gamete, okay, the offspring. All right, last but not least, in our last animation, we saw 6 chromosomes, which would be 3 pairs. So crossing over, just a reminder, is when the chromosomes basically trade or mixing parts of their DNA early on in the process. A centromere is that part that holds the 2 sister chromatids together to make a chromosome. And what's happened to the number of chromosomes at the end of meiosis? Each cell only has half of the number of chromosomes as the original cell, and we started with 1, and we have now turned it into 4 haploid cells. All right, work on that quizzes.